Hello, and welcome back to another mini episode of the Delve podcast. I'm Allie. I'm a staff therapist here at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago.
And I'm Adam, the Executive and Clinical Director at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago.
Help us spread the word with this podcast. We're not trying for fame here. We don't plan to run any ads, so it's very listener friendly. We simply just want to add value to as many people's lives as possible and to be helpful. So if you find this podcast helpful, if it adds value in your life, we ask that you share with at least one other person. It would really help us out.
Yeah, please do. And help spread it around the world if we could. I'm interested in trying to get more of an international audience.
Yes, it'd be so cool to reach that far. Here at Delve, we offer individual, couples, group, and family therapy. If you're interested in a free consultation call, head on over to delvepsych.com. That's DELVEPSYCH.com. And check out our Substack. We write really interesting, juicy blog posts over there. So if you like the topics on our podcast, you're sure to like the topics over there. Head on over to delvepsych.substack.com.
Thank you so much, Allie. And yes, I would encourage people to take a read of some of the topics over there. I think we are writing some pretty interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm. Adam, welcome back from Thailand.
Yeah, thank you. That was a wonderful trip. I had a great time exploring the local culture and having some amazing food and learned a lot. It was a really eye-opening experience. And I also, while I was there, was working my way back through Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And it was so interesting as I was contemplating how we find purpose to also then have him sharing his views on purpose and meaning and finding purpose and meaning, and a lot of what he talked about is like going and having new experiences and experiencing different cultures and ways of being as a way of perspective shifting. So I very much felt that at the same time that I was also consuming that content from Frankl.
Oh yeah, such a good book on your vacation. I love that book. It was life-changing, honestly. So today, Adam, you wanted to talk about the lack of humanity in psychology?
Yeah, I think it's something that I've been thinking a lot about with respect to the state of the field in general. I think when we look at the major thrusts of psychotherapy and psychology in general, I think that the field has been pushed. Firstly, it was kind of championed by, like, psychotherapy itself was somewhat championed by psychiatry, right? The first psychoanalysts were psychiatrists. So that's a medical doctor providing the training and building the kind of institution itself at the beginning. But then also in psychotherapy, I think, or in psychology more generally, there were major trends toward experimentalism and empiricism. Later toward behaviorism, which has a lot to do with just like, what do people do, not what do they think or feel, not identity or anything of that nature, but much more just like, what do they do, and how do we predict what actions they will take. Things have gotten pretty, I think, throughout the history of psychotherapy and certainly psychology more generally, there's often been a thrust toward things like materialism, specificity, experimentalism, empiricism, and behaviorism that I think in some has meant that we've lost a lot of the kind of the humanity in the craft itself. That's not to say in all areas of the discipline, that there's a lot of psychotherapy that continues to be very focused on humanity. I mean, there are humanitarian psychotherapies, and psychoanalysis is one that has kind of retained some humanity within it, whereas, you know, more contemporary approaches like acceptance and commitment therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, etc., tend to be far more kind of specific and protocolized. Basically what I'm trying to say is that I think the main thrust has trended toward this kind of specificity and protocol-based empirical approaches, whereas there is this other quieter history and trend within psychotherapy to continue to be much more human. And I'm just reflecting a lot on that difference right now and recognizing that I think the human approach, the one that really tries to hang on to who we are as people and the kind of the ways that we can really connect with ourselves, our others, societies, cultures, identities, groups, art, expression, that thrust seems to be smaller. I don't know whether it's staying small or growing or shrinking. I'm not really sure. I just noticed that it has been smaller than maybe I would prefer. Tell me if you find anything in any of that rambling.
I mean, it's interesting. I guess I wonder, like, because you'd assume that like therapists go into this field of counseling and psychology because they care about humanity and connecting with humans on that level. And so I wonder, like, this approach of like protocol and like plug this in and then get this output, like, where did that come from? I guess, like, why have we lost some of the humanity in it, I guess?
Well, let's talk about that as two different things. So where does it come from historically, but also the experience of the person that gets into psychotherapy? Because I agree that somebody going into, let's say, a master's in counseling or a doctoral program in clinical psychology, I think they do start off just wanting to be a human connecting with other humans. And then we throw APA formatting at them and scientific journals and then we make them take a research methods and statistics class. I've taught those, by the way, so I'm throwing shade, but I teach those classes. I've taught them at a master's level. And we slowly, I think, bludgeon the humanity out of them and teach them that what they need to be doing is the correct technique for the correct diagnosis. And so then they walk out of these programs very well trained, I think, in the very basics of evidence-based practice, if you will. I've got some issues with that framing, by the way, and have lost a lot of the heart. And then we wonder why they're burnt out 5 years later.
Well, some ideas come to mind. I wonder if, and maybe this is just some of my own stuff coming up, but like, because psychology is more of a soft science, right? I wonder if it's like we're constantly trying to prove ourselves as like a reputable field and like we're doing meaningful work and like, see, here's the evidence, here's the outputs, here's like the evidence that like we're actually, our clients are improving, and which anyways, because like the hard sciences kind of have a more like concrete way of tracking like whether what they're doing is like, with experiments and just like, it's more like concrete proof of like the stuff that they're doing, versus in the counseling field, it's like, it's not as something that you can really grasp onto as far as like concrete, I don't know, how do we track growth, all these kinds of things. But I don't know if that made any sense, but I just feel like maybe part of it is us trying to like prove to whoever, I don't know if it's to just like the larger scientific community, if it's to clients, if it's to ourselves, that like the work we're doing is actually doing anything and is actually meaningful. So therefore we need a more like protocol, hard science-y empirical approach. I don't know.
Yeah, must our egos be so fragile, right? But I do think that's. I think you're right on it with respect to the history of trying to legitimize ourselves in the views of other professions. which actually we have planned to deep dive into that exact question on our next mini episode. Like, how do we actually know that psychotherapy is working? How do we go about answering that question? So I think we'll take a deep dive on that one soon. But with respect to us trying to legitimize ourselves, I do think that's a part of the field. How do we legitimize ourselves to medical doctors, to politicians, to other scientists, researchers, grant funding institutions, etc.? Like, how do we legitimize ourselves? And if we are to legitimize ourselves, then we must do so from their perspective, using their language and their ways of being. You want to know another thing that drives me kind of nuts about the whole soft science thing is that I think psychology is so this is something of an argument that I had with Antonio Puente, actually a former APA chair for a while. He was one of my instructors at UNCW when I was in undergrad. Really great class and a really interesting guy. But we talked about, like, isn't psychology the most fundamental of all sciences? Because all of the sciences are conducted by humans, at least for now. Who does the hard science of chemistry? It's a human brain. Who does the hard science of physics? It's a human brain. And so, like, all of the hard sciences are mediated by this soft one. It's fascinating to me.
I never thought of it that way, and you're totally right. Like, at least for now, humans are mostly conducting these experiments, not robots. I'm sure there are robots conducting experiments. But
but AI historically has the flaw of creativity. It does not know how to be creative. It doesn't know how to ask novel questions. It knows how to regurgitate and repackage and reorganize existing information, but it doesn't know how to push the bounds. Perhaps that is this is something that's debated within the AI world, as far as I know, is the degree to which AI is capable of doing that and should be allowed to do that. I personally believe it is capable. I suspect, though I'm not a computer scientist, that we still just have enough of the constraints, as well as it being new enough that we haven't really sort of gotten to the execution of that particular ability. But I think it is capable of asking new questions and seeking new answers, at least for now. At least with respect to the tools that we lay people have access to, it's not doing that. It's not going to ask that cutting question that takes us in a new direction. It's very much locked into our current Kuhn cycle, if you will.
Yeah. So I guess, like, how do we bring more heart and humanity into our sessions with clients?
I mean, I think to some level we just do. I think of this in two levels. One is that many of the much more humanitarian-based psychotherapies do have an evidence base. In fact, a very good evidence base. But that's often what word do I want here? De-emphasized or discounted by the more traditional forces in psychology right now that are more likely to say, no, CBT, ACT, those are the approaches that have an evidence base to them. That's one part. Emotions-focused therapy and psychodynamic psychotherapy have a broad evidence base for them. And as well, there's a ton of an evidence base for what they call a common factors research, that any psychotherapist doing just about anything, but doing so connected to their client and in pursuit of growth, generally speaking, is helpful. And clients get better if they have a meaningful relationship with a psychotherapist who's invested in their growth, consistent with unconditional positive regard, and builds a genuine relationship with them. It doesn't even matter what you're doing. So I think we got to stop focusing on what we're doing and focus on the relationship and the humanity itself.
Yeah, I think it was Carl Rogers that said that like the therapeutic relationship itself, like that accounts for like most of the growth in clients and like the what's the word I want to use? Just that relationship in itself is like so much more meaningful to like the process of therapy than like any techniques or any other thing that you try to use in session.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Technique helps, but I think it's very much, at least in my eyes, secondary to the relationship building.
Yeah. Um, I think too, like, I don't know. I I feel like sometimes, especially newer therapists, kind of get in their heads about like whether we're actually like doing anything in session, which is when we tend to be like, okay, where's this technique and this technique? I need to like do something in session. Like where's my textbook? I need to like add some more tools and techniques to the session because nothing's happening. We're just talking. And just like reminding the newer therapists that like just sitting in humanity with another person, being present, listening, um, just giving them that space, that in and of itself like does so much more than we like I think give credit for. And everything
Absolutely.
else is just like cherry on top. But yeah, I think I think this idea of like we need to be doing something could also be a factor in why we tend to go for more like regimented CBT approaches or whatnot. Um, yeah,
Yeah, because that we have to get something done. It's that productivity mindset, right? And we're not necessarily just sitting and waiting and being with another person, which when we do that, if we are able to do that, very often creates a sense of safety and care and connection that can allow the client to figure out their own shit. And we don't have to be the mastermind of their, you know, life reorganization. They can do it them damn selves as long
hmm
as they got somebody there to support them. And what does support look like? I can give you perspective. I can try some things. I can share some knowledge and wisdom. But at the end of the day, I care about you. That's a
yeah.
that's a lot. And there's even teaching within psychotherapy that sort of suggests that that idea of caring about your clients, you sort of need to be distant in that way too. You sort of, well, you can't care too much. You can't get over involved. Like the mentality is, don't get hyper involved in their lives. I agree. Maintain the standards, but it's so interesting that we spend so much time teaching people to not turn into the guy from Shrinking that we forget to teach them that no, but you do need to care. And that care can be genuine. You can be invested in these people's lives and care who they are and what's happening for them, and they can care what's happening for you as well, um, without becoming the guy from Shrinking.
So I still have not seen Shrinking, so I don't quite get the reference, but I assume he's very over involved in his clients, maybe.
Right from the start, and you should check it out. It's a wonderful show. In fact, one of the last shows that I like ugly cried at.
Wow. Okay, you might have sold that to me. Adam Ugly crying. Yes, let's.
It's a good one.
No, 100% because there's always these warnings like, okay, if you get too if you care too much about like what's going on in your clients' lives and you make it like become their problems become your problems, then you're going to be so burnt out and you're going to crash and burn and it's no good. So I think instead we do tend to go towards the opposite end, which is like keeping them at a distance, like really keeping the self-disclosure to a bare minimum. And obviously we have to be like intentional about the self-disclosure, but I think working with you at Delve, like it opened my eyes to being like, oh wow, I can be more myself in session than I thought. And like as long as the self-disclosure is intentional, like why not? If it's helpful for the client, as long as that's the intention. You know, it was like it was such a mind shift for me of like, wow, like how much this can benefit the relationship if I'm able to
Be a human
be a human.
rather than a practitioner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to outline my kind of basic philosophy on self-disclosure, one, be careful. But how do you be careful? If you're sharing something, you should first have thought, is this for me or is this for them? If I'm sharing for them, you're probably in pretty safe territory the majority of the time. My other two caveats are, don't share anything that's really new in your life, generally speaking. Like if it just happened, don't talk about it. You still need some time for you to integrate. And don't share anything that you're still emotionally stuck on. And if it's old or if it's still active for any reason in your own kind of agita, then those are times that you generally want to be pretty careful. The last thing I'll say is if you find yourself as a therapist disclosing a lot, it's helpful to just add the additional question, is there another way to deliver this same idea without self-disclosure? And I often have coached students who've gone a little far into the self-disclosure realm to just practice non-disclosure approaches. Like keep going, I've got to deliver this idea. How would I do it if I was absolutely banned from self-disclosure? You often find really interesting ways to teach doing that particular exercise. And then, you can slowly reintroduce self-disclosures. But generally speaking, if you're sharing for them, not new stuff, not active stuff, and not too much, the majority of the time, clients actually really appreciate it. I had a client one time, they were stuck on this one idea for something like 3 weeks, 3 straight sessions. And I remember having in my head, like, Adam, you have a personal experience with this. But I thought it was too on the nose to just self-disclose. It felt a little hacky for me to just self-disclose that I dealt with that thing and how I solved it. So I kept trying those alternative approaches for 3 weeks. And eventually I said, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to try to share. And I actually had the perception as I was sharing that it was maybe a bit of an overshare. The client said, that helped, and never talked about it again. Like I shouldn't say never talked about it again, but like we processed that and he's like, no, I see what you did there and I see why that was useful. That was really helpful. Thank you. And then we were able to move on with the psychotherapy. So
Yeah.
even as I was sharing, I was fairly sure that this was like a reach and it wasn't and it was fine. In fact, helpful. It's like, I mean, think about who we are. Since before we were Homo sapiens, we've been sitting around little like campfires, if you will, sharing stories with each other in whatever way we have, learning from each other. And so for us to deny that whole side of the way that we learn, one, it's anti-Bandura from social learning theory, and two, it sort of takes one of the core ways that humans learn and removes it as an entire option for an enterprise that prides itself on teaching humans how to human. It's like, it's kind of asinine when you think about it. And so if you've lived a life, you've had an experience, the client's now going through that experience, for you to kind of like proverbially put an arm around their shoulder and say, well, let me tell you how I dealt with this.
Mm-hmm.
To deny yourself that is kind of to deny a basic aspect of human relationship and a reasonable approach to learning. Be
Absolutely.
careful, follow some guidelines, stay true to what psychotherapy is trying to do, which is be there for them and help them in their growth process. And then chill out. It's probably fine.
Yeah.
And if it's not fine, process it with them. Have the skill to be able to process it with them.
Right. Yeah. I think the last thing I'll say is like in my master's program, I think one of my professors, what he worked with us a lot on is like a lot of us, doing this, practicing this for the first time, we were all kind of putting on this, like, I am therapist now. I am this professional buttoned up person. And First of all, I think clients can see through that. Second of all, they're coming to therapy for you. It's the reason why we say, like, yeah, make sure you find a good fit for yourself, because like not everyone is going to fit with everyone. They're coming for your humanity. So like my professor would be like, yeah, they're coming for Allie. Like, it's okay to like put in Allie into your sessions. Be, because if clients were just coming to therapy for some like robotic cookie cutter answers, they would just go to some AI chatbot.
Yeah.
They don't need us then,
Yeah. I have actually played around with some of the AI chatbots and just tried to see what happens when you share with them the kinds of stuff that clients might share in a session. Maybe we should do that on an episode sometime, where we kind of go line by line. I'm unimpressed.
Good. I'm glad you're unimpressed.
I think we can do better.
Yeah.
By a lot.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really interesting conversation on humanity and therapy, and I hope that us therapists can continue to try to intentionally bring more humanity into our sessions. I think the clients would be better for it.
Yeah, we can't lose the heart.
No. All right. Your new quote: "You are not afraid of abandonment. You are afraid of confirming your pre-existing belief that you are unlovable." Who? Yeah, because we feel like if someone leaves us, then it just confirms what we already kind of feel about ourselves.
Which means that the work is internal, and the person is somewhat superfluous to this journey that we're on to build our own stability, if you will, security.
So instead, it's about working on ourselves and this like core belief that we're unlovable.
I think so.
Yeah.
But what's challenging is I think there's one of two ways that this can go, and it interacts with the attachment style stuff. So somebody with avoidant attachment will eventually end up back in a romantic attachment of some kind, typically, because that attachment drive exists in all humans. It will, almost all humans, it will likely show back up at some point. And as they're in a relationship, they'll sort of double down on this idea that I am lovable and I'm okay and secure on my own, but they'll struggle to actually display that while they're in a relationship. And they'll be able to feel that sense of security when they're outside of a relationship, but then the attachment drives will come back. So you'll end up constantly in conflict in those two things. It's secure the idea that you are lovable as you are, but also that you have responsibilities in a relationship and do need to show up for the other, all in the same go. You've got to kind of prove to yourself that you are lovable while in a relationship, not while out of one. And then somebody that's more of an anxious attachment style is going to struggle most with distance from a relationship. So if there's a disconnect from their partner or they're outside of a relationship, there's obviously going to be some distress there because a relationship is such an obvious drive. But simultaneous to that, you sort of need to have and continue to work on that idea of a basic security and a basic belief in your own lovability while you are going through that experience, while you're going through that panic. So simultaneously, remembering that I could be internally panicking and still lovable as I am. But that's the kind of growth that I have to work on.
Yeah, so slightly different approaches based on like attachment style, I guess.
Yeah, and in both cases, you're actually doing the work when you're in a relationship, not when you're out of a relationship, because the problem is relational.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was also like a big thing I took from dating group with you, was like a lot of people are like, man, I need to work on myself and I need to be like completely fixed, quote unquote, before I get back into another relationship. And it's like, No, not necessarily. Like a lot of the stuff that you need to work on is in relationship with another person. And so, yeah, like maybe, take a little time for yourself, but then like a lot of the work is going to come from actually practicing these things in a relationship. Because you can maybe feel all fine and dandy being single, but then once you get back in that relationship, all the old stuff that you haven't worked through comes right back again. So
It's like if you were trying to learn how to ride a bike and your primary issue was that you're terrified while riding a bike that you're going to fall, then the avoidant approach would be get off the bike, have your feet on the ground, feel that sense of security and be like, see, I did it. And it's like, no, get on the bike and then do it.
yeah,
Now you've done it.
I really like that metaphor. No, that's really good. It so plainly shows like you can't work through the thing without actually like doing the thing. So
right. And then the anxious person, they're going to be on the bike anxious, and while somebody's holding them up, be like, see, I did it. It's like, no, they're propping you up. You got to do this on your own. Make them let you go and then do it.
I love it. I hope that metaphor was helpful for everyone, because I know for me, it was very helpful. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of the Delve podcast. As always, if you're interested in a free consultation call, head on over to delvepsych.com, delvepsych.com, and head on over to our blog, which is on Substack at delvepsych.substack.com. Thanks, everyone,
Thank you
for
so
listening.
much, Allie. Thank you.
Bye, Adam.
Bye.